Hey, this is No Way Jose, a Northern California Piscean stuck in the Arizona desert. I'm a void walker, and I got the shoes to prove it. So what do I do when my soul yearns to delve deep into the realm of the unknown? I aim my satellite straight into the night sky and catch a smooth ride on the KTLK-DB radio waves. I tune into Lighting the Void with Joe Root on the Fringe FM.
Joe, Lighting the Void is the best show on the planet. This is Barney, your friend from Facebook. Thank you and all the crew for all you do. Namaste, my friend.
This is Macon from the foothills of North Carolina, and I am a void walker.
G'day, void walkers. This is Lily from down under Australia. The world may be small, the enigma is greater. So let your curiosity take you for a journey with Joe Root.
Hey, this is V, coming in from Central Maryland, and I am a void walker.
This is Kevin Doherty, a beginner void walker. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I know a little about a lot, and as Leonard Skinner said, I'll guess the rest. I learned a lot from Mr. Root in the show, and heard it from the beginning. I knew right then he was going to be a new Art Bell. Thanks for all your shows, and keep it up.
Hey, this is Derek from Mass, a.k.a. the Night Stalker, and I'm a void walker.
This is Mark from Chicago, and I walk the void to ascertain what is consciousness.
My name is Jared Johnson, and I'm from Humboldt County, California. I do not know all of the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm a void walker. Thanks, Joe Root.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-drift.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and once again, I am your host, Joe Root. We are live on the Fringe FM. It is Tuesday night, November the 19th on into the 20th. Tonight, practicing White Witch, Maja joins us to discuss her new book, The Occult I Ching. Man, this is going to be some interesting stuff. We haven't even talked about the I Ching on the show, not once. And this is going to be her first appearance on Lighting the Void, so we're going to get into some other stuff, too. It's going to be one of those occulty type shows. We're going to talk about magic, the occult, divination. We're going to talk about familiars. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, so get your questions ready. The call-in number for tonight is 1-800-588-0335. If you want to call in, you can also call that direct line at 501-424-5130. And the show is brought to you by GetTheTea.com. Get your winter pack now. It comes with Coral Sea, some Allison Advanced, and some Get the Tea. That's the deal of the winter right now. We're going to give away something, too, for you here. Just a moment, I'll tell you about that. Also, the show is brought to you by Ancient Life Oil, the best CBD oil on the planet. and metaphorical archaeology. If you've had any paranormal trauma in your life and you want to get a free session with Barbara, give them a call at 214-995-3754. That's metaphorical archaeology. Okay, so what we're doing is, since we're taking a trip, we're going to be in Portland this weekend. We're going to be doing the Battle Royale with Clyde Lewis at Ground Zero. That's going to be Saturday, November the 23rd at 7 p.m. at Paradise Lounge or Bar Sports Grill. I think that's the name of it. So I hope to see you guys out there. But because we're going out there, Ryan Gable and I, we're raising money for this. So what we're going to do is we're doing a giveaway. So if you donate between now and Thursday morning, any more than $10 to the network by hitting the donate button on either website, lightingthevoid.com or the Fringe FM, you're going to be in a drawing to get the winter pack from getthetea.com, as well as a Lighting the Void t-shirt and a bottle of Ancient Life Oil. So that's pretty big. And so we've gotten a few donors in, but man, there's only like 3 or 4 people that have donated. So you guys, you know, you don't want to make it too easy to let those people win. So it's worth it. Jump in, help us out. And if you're in the area, you know, come give us a visit, man. Like if you live in Portland or you're even in the area, Northern Cali, Portland, Seattle, whatever, just come down and hang out with us. We'll be there that Saturday, November the 23rd. Also head over to ufoseekers.com, backed and supported by the Fringe FM and Lighting the Void. If you want to keep a real journalistic approach to what's going on in the UFO field, give them a follow at UFO Seekers on Twitter. Give them a call, 661-UFO-7889, if you've had a sighting. And follow their new season on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers. So this is going to be interesting. So look, the website for reference tonight, it doesn't, if you're on your phone, doesn't matter. It's witchofthedawn.com. And Maja Da'u is our guest tonight. And a little bit about Maja. She's a practicing white witch whose interest in alchemy and esoteric sciences spans her entire lifetime. And she earned her master's degree in transformational psychology, focusing on shamanism and the I Ching, and writes about alchemy and magic. Her recent books are A Witch's Bestiary. Is it Bestiary? That's right. Familiars and Witchcraft, the development of relationships with spirits, or familiars. And that's when the relationship is developed and sustained. The spirits are there to assist and guide and serve, and there's a mutual exchange. But however, we'll talk about this too. When the relationship is neglected or not in control, a harmful mutiny can form. The main book tonight that I wanted to talk about was the Occult I Ching, Secret Language of Serpents. And the purpose of the I Ching, according to Maja, is to open up a dialogue with our daemons so that we may have an interchange, and it allows us to communicate with the deepest parts of ourselves. And we'll get into that as well. And I've never done a show about the I Ching ever. And Maja, thank you for coming on the show tonight. It's a real blast to have you on here. I know this is going to be a fun conversation.
Oh, thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for having me. I know. I'm excited to speak with you. I love talking about this stuff.
You're the only one that I've ever talked to. Like, we've talked to a lot of occultists and magicians and witches on the show, but you're the only one I've ever talked to that calls herself a white witch, and I think that's pretty cool. So what actually, I really do. And what do you think separates a white witch just from, I don't know, a regular witch?
Oh, sure. Most of my focus is on empowerment and doing magic that strengthens the will and focuses on creativity. Of course, we all have shadow stuff, and it's very important to do shadow work. You can't neglect that aspect of it. But with the white witchery, the focus is on healing rather than manipulation magic. So a lot of magic, if you just go to the regular channels, there's going to be a fair amount of manipulation involved, whereas a lot of the techniques that I do work more on opening a space for spirit to come in and do stuff rather than my will or something that I might desire. I want to try to shoot for pulling in something much higher than myself might desire in the situation. So it's most of my practices work on overshooting that desire that I might have personally to try to get a transpersonal or larger view of everything.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's kind of like what we've talked about with it sounds like, anyways, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, kind of like what the Rosicrucians or maybe the Golden Dawn does, where they're more focused on communicating with their higher self or trying to self-discover even more and learn who they are as they kind of grow and learn these occult secrets type deal, right? That's what I'm used to. Yeah.
Very much, yes.
And so, yeah, so that's cool. So you're probably really big into alchemy and stuff then too, huh?
Yes, I've studied alchemy at great lengths. I do a lot of practices in alchemy too, both physically. I've studied a lot of Chinese alchemy, which was part of what brought me to the I Ching, actually. I initially was studying martial arts and Chinese medicine, and then I discovered the I Ching through that route. So a lot of people don't know that alchemy was in a lot of other parts of the world other than just Europe and Egypt. Right? Most people, if you've heard of alchemy, you know about Egypt and you know about European studies into alchemy, but there's huge amounts of literature about alchemy from the Taoist Chinese folks, from India and early yoga literature. And then we also see it in many other places in Africa as well. So it's really, I got very interested in looking into some of these lesser known histories of alchemy in other parts of the world.
So, wow, that's really cool. So what is your version of it then? Because here's what I get when I talk about alchemy. I've heard people tell me it's about Carl Jung. It's about interpreting the symbols of the psyche. And then I've heard others talk about, well, alchemy is really all about transmuting the ego. And then I've even had other hermeticists tell me, no, alchemy is really about transforming your energetic body through your physical body to become this higher being. And I'm like, wow, that is a lot of mixed messages there. Which one is it, right? That's one I'm trying to figure out.
Yes. Well, I would say for myself, what I have garnered from my alchemical studies, and this is viewing it from, I've read the actual books of Paracelsus, of many of these early European alchemists. I've actually gone back into the literature and read it. I've read actual books by Chinese alchemists. I read the Nei Ding of Gehong. So if I'm actually looking at these texts, not based on, looking at some website or what some New Age website says that alchemy is, if I go back to these texts and I compare them and I see what is the thing that's in all of these books that are calling themselves by that name alchemy, what I find is that the thing that all of them are talking about is a unification of two things to form a single thing. So if we're going to go universally through all the alchemical literature, we're having two separated things, and those things are usually the physical body and the spirit. And then those two things through the process of alchemy. So alchemy really is like this process that brings those two things together and unifies and joins them into one thing. So in that way, it's actually a lot like the meaning of the word yoga. If you look at the technical meaning of yoga, it's a yoke, or like a yoke is a thing that like oxen wear when they're pulling a cart, or like to hold two horses together if they're pulling a cart. So it's something that marries or joins things. So really, a lot of the alchemy stuff, you'll hear about the hieros gamos, or the alchemical wedding. This, of course, is all over the Jungian material. And it's always talked about in terms of this marriage stuff and this linking and this yoking. And all of that really is to express that it's marrying these two separate components and making them into a new thing or a singular thing as a result. So all those things that you kind of listed when you said all these, different interpretations that people are giving you, those all are kind of hinting at that. But the real thing that makes it alchemy, in my opinion, is that it has to be a process that joins together these two previously separated parts of not just ourselves, because people are viewing it through human beings, right? But humans aren't the only ones that can do alchemy.
Really?
Yes, alchemy is a natural process. It's part of nature. Okay, so a lot of people, since we're people, we anthropomorphize everything, and then we separate ourselves from other things. So we think that alchemy is some kind of human process that we do to join our psyche, right? So a lot of people will talk about it like it's something humans do to join their body and their soul, and that's fine. But I like to kind of pan out on things and look at them really big. And what I see is that alchemy happens all over the place. One of the main things of alchemy is transmutation. You've heard that word transmutation, right?
Yes, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like taking all this in. Yes, I have. Actually.
Yeah, so transmutation, for folks that don't know, that's the part that turns lead into gold. So a lot of people, even if all you know is the Scooby-Doo version of alchemy, you know that it's this process that transmutes or transforms different atomic elements into other atomic elements. And this is called transmutation. And it was really kind of made fun of by a lot of scientists as being impossible, which is totally frustrating because elements change into other elements all over the place in the universe. This happens on the sun on a daily basis. So if we're thinking that human beings are the only ones that do alchemy, well, the sun can do it all the time. So I'm not buying that story. So what we really see is that alchemy is a natural process that humans can consciously engage in and kind of like participate in and learn how to do.
Okay. That makes more sense than what everybody else has told me. Because it's like,
good. I win the prize.
Well, I mean, that's even in a lot of scripture and stuff. When you make the two become one, everything's alchemy.
Yes.
That's like the biggest secret of everything, right? I mean, isn't it the core
really
of everything?
Yes, it is the biggest secret of everything. It's very important. It's really held as one of these mysteries. But if, like you said, if you read any religious scripture from any religion, I don't care which one, you're going to see all kinds of references to this action of, it's when two come together in my name. It's all over every single religious scripture, going all the way back into shamanic stuff. So there was this famous scholar named Mircea Eliade. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's a Romanian name, but he was very famous. Carl Jung read him a lot. Mm-hmm. And have you ever heard of Mircea Eliade?
No, but I've heard of Carl Jung.
So Mircea was very famous for a book he wrote called Shamanism, Techniques of Ecstasy. And then he wrote another book called The Forge and the Crucible. And in his book, The Forge and the Crucible, he talks about how alchemy actually came from shamanism and how you can look at these alchemical terms that people are using, certainly the Europeans. If you look at the words they use in their alchemy books, they're really talking about things that shamans talk about in indigenous cultures. So he was really good at drawing those links. But like you said, it really is pervasive through almost any spiritual material. You're going to find this kind of language that talks about marrying these two separate or almost polarized entities and, smooshing them together or joining them together, and that this is what makes creation happen, essentially. And so it's not only humans that can do creation, obviously, but it's really like the secret of all of nature.
See, that's what I've been thinking too. Like alchemy is definitely the deepest secret of all of the stuff and the occult and esoteric. And I'm glad that you recognize that, because I recognize that, and I'm not as studied as you are, but I know that that's what we need to be checking out. That's what we really need to be studying is alchemy.
You're on the nose.
Yeah.
You're on the nose.
So tell me about your book about the I Ching, because or the I Ching, I guess that's what some people call it. That's probably the right way to say it. I've never used the I Ching before, ever. And so I'm just curious as to why you would use it for divination versus other things like the tarot or astrology. Is it better or is it unique?
Yes, that's a very good question. And the I Ching really, I'm not sure how to say it either. It's a Chinese word. So I know I'm just a super whitey white person, so I hope they forgive me. But I think, Chinese language is very difficult. I think it would technically be pronounced Yi Jing, but I'd probably get corrected by a Chinese person.
Probably,
but
yeah.
It's written in several different ways. So it's confusing because Chinese language was very difficult to get put into English. So there was this language called Pinyin that they kind of had to create to translate Chinese into English because they couldn't even do it. So you'll see I Ching written several ways. Sometimes it's YIJING, and then other times it's the letter I, CHING, and that's actually because of the difficulty with translating Chinese into English. It's a fascinating story if you're into languages, if you read the history of Pinyin and how really it was a bunch of English people that had no idea how to make the Chinese language into English words. And they literally had to hire a bunch of Chinese people to come up with this language called Pinyin in order to do it. So it is very hard to access if you don't know anything about China or Asia or, Chinese language. Certainly, there's going to be a bit of a difficulty through culture that you have to get through. So I think that's one of the reasons why I Ching is still a little obscure and most people don't use it as much as they would say tarot or astrology, like you mentioned. Do you do any divination? Do you personally do like tarot and astrology stuff?
Yeah. Tarot and geomancy and astrology. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So then and are familiar with the divination languages or kind of how it goes, right?
Yes.
So it works through dialogue. You open a dialogue through the symbols, essentially, is what all divination is. And once you use a few different forms of divination, like some people might only use tarot or only astrology, but if you use multiple divination systems or look into a whole bunch of them, you see that it's actually all very similar, right? It's all because the archetypes are universal. Mm-hmm. So like, even though the I Ching is definitely Chinese, the archetypes and the stories that are in the I Ching are the same as the other archetypes because archetypes are archetypes. Yeah, right. They're everywhere. They're universal. They go beyond language and culture. So I have studied a lot of different divination systems. And what I notice is those archetypal stories are the same. So really, one of the things I recommend to people, and this maybe your listeners will find this helpful, you really don't need to learn all the different divination systems. All you need to learn is mythology. And if you learn mythology and specifically like creation stories, and you can really pick any culture's mythology, you'll learn every divination system because every divination system uses those same characters as their kind of backbone. And then, there's going to be nuances and differences in all of them. But that backbone structure of every divination system is just the archetypes that you're coming into communication with through the interface. So it's actually kind of funny. It's like whatever divination system you use is kind of like your operating system, right? So it's like the difference between using a Mac or a PC almost, where there's just different interfaces, is kind of how I came to view it. But the I Ching is definitely unique, and I do feel like every divination system is unique and has its own character or flavor or feeling to it. Like, if you do tarot, you can kind of like feel what the tarot is. Have you had that experience?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I've looked at it from both ways, like meditative and scrying, and then also using it for divination. So it kind of works. I guess it works two different ways for me, but I got a feeling that tarot is a book it's basically the book of initiation, kind of showing you the process that you go through. And then it shows you like all of the aspects and archetypes that are inside that story,
Yes, like a path.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, basically, right? So all these divination systems are showing you that kind of path. So how I would describe I Ching differently than tarot, it definitely has a different feeling to me. So like I'll even do tarot and I Ching both together in a reading. So if I have like a client, I'll use sometimes astrology, I Ching, and the tarot. I'm not, picky. I'll use any tool in the toolbox. And it's funny because they'll usually all support each other and have the same kind of answer. So it helps people really get that clarity when it's like three of their friends telling them the same thing, So they're like, oh, well, I guess it's that. But the I Ching is very specific, and it kind of has like an attitude. So when I use tarot, it has a very kind of feminine feeling when I use tarot, and it's kind of comforting and nurturing. But when I use I Ching, it's very straightforward, very logical, very like kind of has an attitude like let me tell you what this is. So it definitely, when I use different divination systems, I can kind of feel their like character. It's like they have a different character to them.
Okay. Yeah, because the title says The Language of Serpents, and I guess what I'm trying to understand is that is it the shadow self that you're tapping into a little bit more with the I Ching, or is it basically the same, like you're saying, as all the other systems?
That's a very good question. And the serpent reference in the title, which I get into in the book, is a reference to how nearly all of the ancient oracle systems, whether they were tarot or going all the way back to the oracles themselves, when people used to go to receive a divination, there would be a priestess who was performing it. There were men as well, but there was the tradition of the Sibylline oracles was probably the most famous, which was where we get the Oracle of Delphi. And they all got their communications from serpents or dragons. The Oracle of Delphi had her familiar spirit, which was a python or a giant serpent. And all of these daemons or shadow parts of us, or our kind of other, or there's a lot of different words people use for them, but daemon was probably the most popular, and that was made popular by Socrates, who would come into conversation with his daemon, and he actually personally talked to the Oracle of Delphi as well. So there's this tradition of serpents being the source for many, many oracles, and this is from Europe to Africa to Asia to India, and I track them in my book, and I give examples of all of these different oracle systems that get their communication from either these giant serpents or dragons. Even in alchemy, if you go back, which I talk about in the book too, if you go back in the alchemy literature, you see that it comes from Thoth. Okay, so you've heard of Thoth, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like the guy that alchemy comes from. But where does Thoth get what he knows? Right? This is how my brain works. I'm always like, wait, how did you figure that out? So Thoth gets his information from talking to a dragon, to a giant serpent called Poimanders.
Well, that's
so
right.
If,
yeah.
Right? So if we track back all of these sources of knowledge, it's a pretty crazy story, man, because if you get into, I'm obsessed with like sources. Like I have to know where stuff comes from. So that's really like a driving force of how my brain works. And so I took the trouble of, when I'd get into this information on occult stuff, I have to find out where is this coming from. And it's always coming from a dragon.
Okay. Well, look, I want to get into this a little bit more. We got to take our break here, but that is interesting because you're not the first person that's come on the show that's talked about that. If you guys remember, Nineveh Shadrach came on the show and talked about the sources of everything goes all the way back to what he called the jinn and the dragon kings or serpent kings. So that's, that's pretty interesting. Look, guys, we'll be right back with Maja Da'u. There, that's how I said it right. We'll be right back.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Root, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonderlight Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com.
I think by now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Alright everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your northern self and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussel, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
Listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right, so we are here with Maja and we're talking about her new book, The Occult I Ching. Interesting. The purpose of the I Ching is to open up a dialogue with our daemons. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more with Maja here. And I think daemons is another word, I guess, that people, and you can correct me too on this if I'm probably wrong, but isn't that where we get the word demon from, right?
Correct, yes. It has been turned into demon from the Christians and the Catholic Church mostly, but back in the day, the daemon was like your guardian spirit or your guardian angel. It was really like your guardian angel.
Secret Language of Serpents. Okay, so when I read the Hermetic text, right, and you were talking about that, the Divine Poimandres, that's one of them.
Yes, that's right.
He is talking to a dragon, right, like a serpent type being.
Yep, he sure is.
Nineveh Shadrach came on here, and I was telling you this during the break. He said, look, we have a lot of names for a lot of things. He said, but a lot of times people are, when they're calling these serpents, demons, angels, elementals, he goes, 9 times out of 10, they're just talking about jinn, and they're talking about jinn that go back way, 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 way back, further than we can imagine. And it was really kind of freaky listening to him talk about it, about how ancient these things were. You have any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. So the jinn, I talk about in my other book, Familiars in Witchcraft. The jinn is actually where we get the word genius from. From the word jinn, we get genius, and that idea of a genius is a guiding intellect, or a kind of like, the way that I experienced it personally is it's like a level of consciousness that you can reach. So people talk about angels in a lot of different ways, and I don't need to argue about what an angel is, but they have like a kind of frequency or like feeling, like a character, like how I talked about the divination. So you can like reach those levels of consciousness, and each level you go through has a kind of signature or feeling. So it's like you have your feeling, right? If I'm talking to Joe, I know you're Joe. I feel you. I know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Joe, right?
Yeah.
So if you have some of, like, say, a jinn comes up to you and it's a specific genius or intellect or energy that has like this signature or feeling about it. So the best way to describe the jinn, they were also called genies, right? So that's also where we get the word genie from. So they're really very much, from what I could say, is like an intellectual signature of a consciousness that's just there. So in terms of being ancient, like it's a consciousness that is there kind of outside of space and time. and you can almost like go visit it. And that's what the invocation stuff is really about. And if you've ever done Solomonic magic or, you know, some of that kind of angel magic, that's really kind of what you find out it is when you have a real experience of it. It really manifests like that kind of signature, and then you can come into a dialogue with it, much like is described in the Divine Pymander.
Interesting. Okay, so does that make it, well, does that make it safe, unsafe, or, I mean, how would we look at that as far as...
There's a lot to that, right? So there's a lot of real risks. I talk about the risks in the Familiars book because some of these signatures aren't very nice. Like, you know, take Solomon, King Solomon, okay? Like I mentioned, the Solomonic magic. He was destroyed by the demons that he was working with and the daemons and the jinn, right? So they kind of like ganged up on him and attacked him. They tricked him into losing his ring, which was how he controlled them. So he had all kinds of issues. And this is Solomon we're talking about, right? The supposed wisest guy around. So, and he had help from all of these different sources, and even he had trouble corralling them. So it's kind of like dealing with wild animals, right? They're their own ancient intellect. They don't care. They don't have that same kind of like caring about stuff because it's just not even, it doesn't translate.
It doesn't matter to them. There's no morality issue there.
It's not like they're immoral. It's like they're amoral, like a coyote, right?
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
that if there's danger, it's dangerous. Like if a coyote is your friend, you know, they're fine until they're hungry.
See, but that still scares me, right? So,
right? If you don't feed it, then you're going to have a problem. So, and that's traditionally, if you look in all this spirituality, people who work with these kinds of things, there's special things about feeding them and sacrifices you have to make and very specific protocol that you have to follow. And if you don't follow this protocol, you run into trouble.
Right. Yeah, so it needs to be respected and done properly. And that's why I always tell people, like, hey, if you're going to get into this magic stuff, like, don't jump into Solomonic magic. I'm not trying to tell people what to do, but why not learn how to be safe first, I guess, and kind of learn about energy first until you get involved with this. Of course, I don't like being that guy telling people what to do, what not to do, but I feel you have to feel this way, somewhat responsible for that, because people look to you for so many answers about this stuff.
Yeah, dude, like this is how I explain it. I mean, you're not going to go into the jungle, just go in the jungle, right? Are you? I mean, if you do, you're pretty dumb, right? So anything you do is like this. So I feel like some people's approach to magic does have like a big disrespect, but they don't know, right? This is the problem of ignorance. We don't know, and we kind of bumble through things, and that's okay too. Or maybe nothing would happen if people weren't just foolish most of the time. God knows I've come across some amazing things through my just utter foolishness. But, if I'm going to plan a trek out into the desert, I'm going to do a little research. I'm going to figure out what I need. I'm going to bring a little water, I'm going to figure out that I'm going to have some trouble with the sun. So it's really the same as respecting nature. When people don't respect nature, they get into trouble too. You have to, you got to gird your loins when you go about things in your life. You got to just, take a minute and figure things out. It'll help you a lot. We can kind of stumble through things and trust our luck. But if we're going to try to do certain endeavors, we'll just be able to go a lot further if we figure it out, do a little planning.
So when you got into magic, was it before you were in school? You said that you've been doing this your whole life. So did you do this from the time you were a child, or when did you first draw when did you first draw your first magic circle? How about that?
The first magic circle. That's funny. Well, my first experience with magic, I had an out-of-body experience when I was 2 years old, and I remember it very specifically. And I remember telling my mother about it because I was ill a lot as a child. I had asthma, and I would get pneumonia all the time. So I would get these really intense out-of-body experiences due to the illness. And it's funny, my teacher, Dr. Kelvin DeWolf, he's a Native American Mi'kmaq indigenous person. He studied Chinese medicine and martial arts and all this kind of stuff too. I was very grateful to find him. But he also had asthma as a child, so I thought that was very interesting. And I feel like quite a few people that really get into this stuff have had some kind of illness that kind of popped them out of regular reality or forced them to go deeper into their flesh somehow. They maybe something that forced them to not take reality for granted or pushed it to a crisis. A lot of times coming into these different perception states really involves some kind of crisis. So really around the time I was a child, I could see that things were weird and different than what other people were saying. And then as I kind of grew up, we moved to an island. So I was really surrounded by nature and just kept having experiences in the nature. So I started learning about paganism when I was, I would say maybe 13. So it was probably around 13 I started doing it proper, and then just kind of got way into it in my teenage years, and then really went into alchemy in my 20s.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, I kind of started in my late 20s, but I've never had a dangerous experience, but it's funny that you talk about the out-of-body experience, because I actually tried to have an out-of-body experience before I got into magic, and it wasn't until I started doing just a couple of basic things, which was the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, and the middle pillar, and I believe I was doing the fourfold breath and the meditation where they have you just stare at one point. So I was doing that quite a bit. And I think it was about my second week or so into that is when I had that real out-of-body experience, the one where you're like, holy crap, like this is real kind of thing. And I tell people all the time that those two are directly related. Now, a lot of people have told me, no, that was just a coincidence. It was something that you wanted to do. Well, really? Well, how come it wasn't until I started drawing circles and doing this energetic work until it happened? Right? Yeah. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, for my teacher's techniques, and it's funny with the asthma stuff and the breath, but it's very much breath work and concentration. So the key, no matter what religion, even all religions, if you're going to look into their meditation practices, it's very simple. You're going to do two things. You're going to concentrate and you're going to breathe, right? So the things they'll have you concentrate on will be different, and they'll have different concentration techniques. Some of them work a lot better than other ones. I'll tell you that right now, too. Some of them are so dumb. I'm like, what is this? But it's all kind of like tricks, right? So, but really you're going to have to do different things with your breath. And that's where you're going to see the most progress. But if you have a specific technique and you do it a lot and you master it, right? If it's a good technique, that's really where you're going to get the most headway. We were talking about this a little before, and you had said like you didn't have any experiences until you started doing these specific practices. And I feel like it's like so many people are cheated because they don't ever get it, like I'll talk to people who do Zen meditation in the United States, for example, and they'll tell me about their experience. Like this one guy, I had a reading with him. He was a client, and he said he'd been doing Zen meditation for 10 years. 10 years, and he never had any magical experience or shift in his perception. I'm like, man, that sucks. Like, what a waste. Like, with my teacher, you can feel it, like with the techniques, you feel it right away. And then as you gain momentum, you have direct experiences. So I'm like, so many people are doing all these spiritual practices and they're having no experiences. And it's really just like a ripoff, I feel like. And it's through a lot of misinformation, I think. People think, because they're told, if they do this certain thing or just, love Jesus or whatever, that they'll come into this spiritual thing. And it just isn't true.
Yeah, it is frustrating, right? Because
very much.
Yeah, it is. Even when you start out doing the rituals, you're like, man, what is this? Because they don't ever tell you, they don't ever tell you what the purpose is, right? Oh, it's just for protection. That's it.
Right.
Because I'm not feeling anything different.
Just do it. Don't worry. You won't feel anything, but do it anyway, right? What a bunch of malarkey.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I've experienced that myself, but I think it was the out-of-body experience that I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, so these energy bodies are a lot more, I would say, subtle than what I'm used to. That's the problem. That's the whole problem.
It is, and it's really that whole thing of that it's right in front of your face. It's a very simple. The answer is always so simple. But then, like you said, you join these magic things, and it's very complicated, and they give you all this data that you have to learn and these complexities. And so my teacher always laughs. Kelvin always laughs, and he says they're just blocking the way to it by shoveling a bunch of stuff on top of it, where really you have to clear your mind of anything you think, because that's just going to mess up your ability to have it go.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's no kindergarten, or at least when you go, if you're trying to do it for yourself, there's no kindergarten magic school. Although some have attempted it, like Donald Michael Craig kind of like, I guess did it in a way, right? I would think.
Yeah, he's good. I like his stuff. But yeah, it's really, and there's so much information now, right? So people, they don't know what they're doing or what's going on. And then they go on the internet and they can waste years doing stuff that's getting them nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, see, because that's the question I get a lot. It's like, where do I start? What books do I read? Where do I start? That's it. Where do I begin? And, you told me before the show, you said, well, you probably need to start off with some type of meditation technique, something that works good for you, right? Isn't that what you told me?
Absolutely.
Like
you got to do meditation. There's no way around that.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that. No, that's the boring stuff.
Nobody does. Yeah. I know.
So I want to ask you a little bit about familiars, because this is something that I have no idea about. Okay, so familiars is not something that I've ever gotten involved with, but can you really put like consciousness or parts of your psyche into different inanimate objects, or does it have to be something like a golem, or am I totally off when it comes to familiars here?
No, that's definitely one of the aspects. So that what you're talking about is transmigration.
Okay.
Right? So transmigration of the consciousness is something that is mentioned in almost every major religion, which I think it's fascinating that more people don't talk about this. But you're talking about like placing your consciousness in something outside yourself. So that can be an animal, right? So a lot of people know of the familiar spirits, like say a cat. So a witch and her cat. So her cat can go off somewhere and the witch can kind of like see through the cat's eyes, kind of like that movie Beastmaster, right?
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Right. So yeah, this is things like that are talked about in Buddhism. In Buddhism, there's the famous story of Buddha, how he did that with the elephant, right? That was trashing a village. I don't know if you're familiar with that story.
I'm familiar with the stories and Beastmaster, but can we really do it though? I've never been able to do this stuff. Can you do it?
How could it be told all through history, right? Is it like, here's what I always do when I'm trying to find out if something's true. Is everyone talking about it forever, always? Because maybe that's like one of those indicators that it could be a true phenomenon. But so it's hard to, right? It's hard to know until you have an experience. So one of the best ways I like to explain the transmigration thing is if you've ever had a truly empathetic experience. And this is something that most people will only experience through like their really good friends or their family. It's when you really can feel or put yourself in someone else's shoes. Okay. So I do a lot of psychic techniques and like, practices because I do readings. So a lot of that stuff, I'll even have weird stuff where I'll shift into the other person's perspective where I'm literally kind of seeing what they saw.
Oh,
it's very much like being John Malkovich, really. And you can see like through the other perspective. And this occurs when you can go transpersonal, but you have to be able to kind of come out of yourself. Right? So if you're very yourself, or only stuck in your own perspective, we all know people like that. They're very stubborn, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You try to explain your point of view, and they're like, "No, I don't follow you," right? Because they're to themselves, which is also like a superpower. It's good to be very yourself. Some people can't. They don't know who they are, for crying out loud. So you really have to be able to really be yourself. But then this happens when you can disassociate from yourself. And I feel like people can disassociate. It's kind of like a superpower if you've had trauma, right? So a lot of people that have been through something terrible or a near-death experience. Like, it's funny because my teacher and I, we both have almost died. He did die for a period of time and then came back. And I find a lot of people that have experienced death can disassociate in this fashion. And so one of the ways that you can kind of throw your consciousness, in my experience, maybe some people have other explanations of it, is through these kind of disassociation techniques.
Okay. So, yeah, I want to be able to do that, actually. That would be pretty cool. Is there a book that you recommend on that? Like right off the bat, you could think about
for a lot of the techniques. Those are, you got to go like old school yoga. One of my favorite stories of the transmigration is from Nagarjuna. I don't know if this goes back to the serpents. So in the book, the Occult I Ching, I talk about the Nagas, who are basically the wisdom serpents of India. So there was this guy, Nagarjuna, and he was like a Buddha. There was actually a whole bunch of Buddhas. I know in the West, we only think there's one, but you go to India and they're like, which one? There's like so many of these people that achieve Buddhahood. So Nagarjuna is who the Tibetan religion, they worship and kind of follow Nagarjuna Buddhism. Okay, so like the current Dalai Lama of Tibet, for example, studies Nagarjuna. So Nagarjuna has this story where he came out of his own body and went into the body of the king. And meanwhile, he had his students kind of watch over his body, to make sure nothing happened to it. Right? Because you don't want your body to get messed up while you're doing this. But it's funny. It's kind of like all those movies like Freaky Friday or like Trading Places, right? We actually have this concept is all over pop culture, but it's actually like an ancient yogic technique. It's very hilarious to me when I see it. But so he would transfer himself into these other people and he could operate them like a puppet.
Wow. Yeah,
like
that's
being
incredible.
Malkovich, right? So, and you read it's kind of very difficult to read these books, though. I can recommend them to you, but you have to learn like all this other stuff before you can get into it. But if you want like some of the cliff notes for these types of things are in the Yoga Sutras. So there's a famous book called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, And it was kind of a condensed, quickie version of all of these kinds of things, like the Cliff Notes.
Like the Cliff Notes. Cliff Notes are good.
These very difficult things. And there's a great book called How to Know God. And it's commentary by Christopher Isherwood. Fascinatingly enough, Christopher Isherwood was one of the leaders of the gay rights movement. He was a very important figure in history, but he was a member of the Vedanta Society in Los Angeles, the Yoga Center. So he studied all this crazy stuff. And he did an amazing commentary on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which basically is a cliff notes to all these superpowers. Essentially, that's what is in a good portion of the book. And it's called How to Know God.
Wow. You're just full of knowledge, aren't you? We've got to take a break here. But yeah, you're definitely full of knowledge. I've got some questions I want to get to as well. Maja is who our guest is tonight. Look, go check out the website. It's witchofthedawn.com. We'll be right back. Yeah, you know.
This is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheTea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheTea.com.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM, and visit the website, thefringe.fm, to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste-great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to GetTheTea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
This is Reverend John M. Polk. Please visit me at johnpolkmedia.com and visit my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on thefringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Maja is our guest tonight. The White Witch from Los Angeles. That's what I was saying during the break. I asked her how many witches are in Los Angeles, and she said, "Man, there's quite a few." So you would agree then, totally, Maja, that occultism is getting a lot bigger. It's just getting bigger, isn't it?
Oh yeah, millions now. There's definitely a rise in witchcraft in particular, but also occultism and paganism in general. I think that a lot of people have had it with mainstream religion, due, in part to a large amount of corruption that they're encountering, and also the typical hypocrisy that we meet in any of those. But it's kind of hard to avoid those human problems of corruption and hypocrisy. They show up everywhere from the individual on up. So, but yeah, people are just really had it with the separation in mainstream religion, and witchcraft and occultism enables people to come into a personal relationship with spirit. So it's really not a mystery why that's more appealing than just having to blindly believe in something,
Yeah, it's I think it's cool, but at the same time it causes me a bit of anxiety, and I'll tell you why. Because man, I don't even know if I want to well, you know what? You're really cool, so I can get into this with you. The whole idea of being safe psychically. A lot of people are worried about that. And here lately, I've had dreams that I would swear that somebody's messing with my head. And I'm normally pretty protective of that stuff. I can protect myself very well. But here lately, it's like, okay, I feel like something's going on here. And then that's the first thing we want to run to nowadays. Like, I'm being psychically attacked. Well, yeah. I mean, is it your psychology? Is it a bad planetary alignment? Did you attack yourself? I mean, you got to look at all these things before we say, oh, we're under attack, right?
Yes, there's a lot of that out there for sure. I really like the new Tool album. I don't know if you're a Tool fan.
Fantastic, yeah.
Right? So good. I'm a huge Tool fan. And so there's the Psychopathy song on there, where he really gets into that, of the imagined attacks that people are having is really kind of the core subject of that Psychopathy song. And it's true that people have bad thinking, and sometimes like I'll find myself in the middle of it and I'm like, I don't have these thoughts of that person. Is that person thinking that about me? So then you have to like go through your discernment, right? So basically what's happening is our minds are all getting more connected to each other as we go through this consciousness raising. So I think we're becoming more sensitive to each other, and then everyone's got to go through their, I call it their inferiors. We all have our inferiors and our superiors, and our inferiors get very offended at others, and then you're going to target them with your mind. And so I think there's a lot of people that haven't learned how to wrangle their inferiors. So they're really placing their thoughts on other people in these negative ways. And I think that social media, for crying out loud, like you go on social media, there's so much of this psychopathy going on. where it's just these constant attacks that people are doing to each other, usually over nothing really, although sometimes over, legitly offensive things. But there's definitely collectively a huge rise in the level of dehumanizing offenses towards each other based on polarities of judgment and belief. Everybody's really kind of polarizing from each other and using it as reasons to target and definitely scapegoat. I feel like the scapegoat season is nonstop recently. So that I feel like falls under that psychic attack territory. But you're right. You have to make sure that you're not just paranoid or experiencing paranoia, which is from your own shadow, right? And that's real too. And we definitely will have paranoia arise if we have insecurities or fear. But really, I feel like the best thing to do is if you do get caught in one of those thought trains, which I have felt everyone experiencing. I don't know anyone that hasn't. I think collectively we're just having a real increase in that. So it's kind of just getting into everybody. Like they say on the Tool album, you need a vaccine against it, right? The inoculum.
Yeah.
Because it's so prevalent in our consciousness now. I think it's so that it can come up for exposure, get confronted, and get cleared.
Who's better than Tool, by the way, to deliver that message?
They're the best, in my opinion. So they're so good. I do feel like it's funny. I'm a big Metallica fan, too, and I feel like they really talked about a lot of this stuff years and years ago in their music. So much of it was about a lot of these topics, amazingly enough. And just like those very human things, and they talked about mental illness so well in so many of their albums, too. But I feel like it's trying to get it all up at the surface. So once we get past our kind of falling for it or getting caught up in these tempests and whirlwinds, we'll be able to see it for what it is and be able to clear it out of us, hopefully.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I wanted to bring up another subject too and just clear the air with this, because I heard your actually on your website your speech about it, and I've talked about this on a show so much. Gordon White brought it up, the idea of animism, and you were like, okay, well, on this speech you're like, some people have called it animism, others have called it panpsychism. It's just these guys wanting to name it something because they figured out what it was. And I'm like, hey, this makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so help me understand this. Is this the idea that consciousness is in everything, like everything around us as far as nature goes, right?
I personally believe that. And a lot of quantum physics, I know the quantum physicists get so upset when people who are New Age or witches try to talk about consciousness. But listen, they find that particles such as quarks or photons exhibit conscious behavior. Okay, so a lot of the New Age arguments are taking these and using it to help with their pagan beliefs that everything is animated and alive. You can't separate. There's not like I have consciousness and that rock doesn't, right? So but this is a big topic of debate. And of course, I feel like science is moving towards being able to show that there's consciousness all the way down into the bitty, tiniest particle. But we're, I think, a little ways from getting that really nailed. But all of these ancient things like, panentheism and paganism and animism, like you were talking about, all these different words people are using for it. It's just trying to express that, hey, all of this stuff has some kind of weird awareness or sentience to it.
Well, how could certain objects like puppets or dolls, or even when you bring something into your house and someone sends you like some bad juju in a rock or something, and you don't like cleanse it, consecrate it, or you don't bury it or get it away from you, that bad things happen. Is that in your mind? Is that you causing that? Well, I don't think so. I think energy is directly related to consciousness. So therefore, if somebody puts a bunch of negative energy into an object, but that's kind of different, though, isn't it? That's more like transmigration that you were talking about earlier. Or is
Correct.
that the same thing?
Charging something. Yeah, right. So, and that's all like kind of static cling. I see it, right? So you can even get it on you like the flu or something, and then you just clear it off. That's why people do sage, right? Sage, interestingly enough, scientifically, is antibacterial and antiviral. This is what's so funny. So all the things that people use for clearing, like witches, they use frankincense, they use sage, they use these burning aromatic substances, which go all the way back to pagan histories all over Europe, all over Africa, right? And even in the church, they use frankincense, which they stole from the pagans, of course. I know it's in the Jesus Bible, but I mean, give me a break.
Yeah,
people
right.
have been using frankincense for way long, man. So, but these substances are literally, they get rid of diseases too. They found that frankincense is not only antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral, but it also acts as an antidepressant. It's almost as good as Prozac. They did this study at Harvard where inhaling frankincense literally has antidepressant properties. So it can work to clear, even if you're having like some mental illness episode. The frankincense actually scientifically assists that. So a lot of these techniques that we would do for clearing, like you mentioned, of an object or of whatever that might have bad juju, these things that clear it do actually in real life get rid of bad influences or just yuckers stuff.
That's why like frankincense is a go-to. And I can tell you personally, like when I use my incense burners, like the charcoal burners with some Arabian frankincense or whatever, you can feel it. It's almost like a familiar good feeling that you get when you
agree.
breathe it in.
I love it. And it's very palpable. Like you said, you don't have to imagine it's working. It's something that you can feel directly. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But, okay, so back to this idea of animism then. So I had a guy tell me, he said, it's great that you use frankincense for clearing or that you use sage or whatever. He goes, but try this. And this really worked for me. He said, look into the history of where you live, like where you are now, the Native Americans, whatever. Look, what did they use? Find out what they used, and then use that and see if you can see a difference, right? And so I found out here that they didn't use sage or frankincense. They use like cedar or whatever where I live, and I tried that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, you could really, like, I felt energized afterwards. I felt happier. And I don't know if it could have been a psychological thing, but I doubt it, right? So is there a direct relation to that? And does that kind of like how animism works? Because there is an energetic, I guess you could say, footprint to everywhere we go, or maybe a conscious footprint to every location.
Absolutely. I mean, you're on a living organism. The earth is a living organism, and it has all of these ecosystems, and every place you go has like a feeling to it. I mean, you'll go to some places, you can feel that place, and it always kind of feels the same. And I mentioned this in the Familiars book also, where different lands or countries will have a familiar spirit or a kind of vibe to them, and they'll have these representatives. It's funny because all of the states have their representative plants and birds, right? It's like I said, like if I'm talking to you, I'm like, now I'm talking to Joe. And it's the same if you go to these locations. It's like visiting a friend. So these places that we can go, the land itself has its own special, energy and group of things that come together. So I absolutely love that idea. And also, with the indigenous peoples, I spend a lot of time with this too. I know I mentioned my teacher, but man, we're on occupied territory, and all of these things that we're learning, I really encourage people to learn about the cultures and the history of the people that have developed these techniques, and to honor those people. And if you can find any of them nearby, to support them and to assist and aid them, instead of just kind of trying to take all their stuff and learn it and do it yourself. Go try and give them like a little boost and include them in it if you can. And if you benefit from it, like give back to them. So, and that's like really was their practices too. If they take from the land, if they take these clearing plants or whatever, that there's an exchange, and that they give back, and they have a relationship. You come into a relationship with the land that you're living on.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I agree. I got some more questions on that, but we'll go ahead and take our first caller here. Looks like 406 area code. You're on the air with Maja Da'u. Who are we speaking with? Jake, what's on your mind, brother?
Well, I actually had two questions for Maja. First of all, thanks for having her on the show. It's a great topic. I enjoy it very much.
Yeah.
My first question would be on the I Ching. I have always had trouble with divination, and I was wondering, with messing with the I Ching, are there any tips or tricks to memorizing the hexagrams and the changing lines, or should we just play with it and figure it out, get more familiar with it, like you would with the tarot, like the major and minor arcana?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's true with the divination, it's difficult because it's so data heavy, right? So you're right. What do? Do you just memorize everything or try to get a feeling? For me, I'll tell you, I made the best headway with my teacher's book. His name is Stephen Karcher, and he has a book called Total I Ching. And in it, he tells the stories or the myths of the hexagram. So the best way that I learned and I feel like really connected to the hexagrams was by learning the stories behind them, right? And then that's really the best way, is learn like who's the character. So it's almost like learning the tarot card, right? So you'll be like the devil. Well, what does that mean? Who is it? What's its attributes? So the best way that I learned the hexagram was through reading those stories of the myth it was talking about. And then with the changing lines, there is a good trick, because each of the lines, and this is something I talk about in my book, but you can find it easily on the internet too. Each line in the hexagram kind of represents a different area. So the first line is like the self, right? Very internal and you, on up to the sixth line, which is like outward or everybody else or outside of you. So if you can kind of break it down to see those kinds of nuances in the line and learn what each line represents, it'll be easier than just memorizing all of the lines, because there's like 10,000 different possible combinations in the I Ching, right? So there's a lot of data, and that's the way people usually use the books to go from. And then I've just done it so many times that I just remember. But really the biggest thing that made the difference was learning the nature of the story, and then learn what each of the lines represent in general. I hope that helps a little bit.
Does that help you out, Jake?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Did you have another question too, or was that it?
Yeah, my other question was more about the daemons. So why do you think the daemons have been so negatively associated in Western culture? Do you think it's mainly just to keep people from toying with things they're not ready with psychologically, or do you think it's just purely vindictive?
It's pretty weird, I gotta say. Like you can get real conspiracy theory story about it because it's weird. But, I always like to use Socrates as the best example. So Socrates literally was put to death for having a relationship with his daemon. He lost his life, and all of his students were flabbergasted, and everyone was literally like, he lost his life to ignorance over the daemons. That was what that story was. And so there is and they murdered all of the oracles and Vestal virgins that had conversations with their daemons. All were murdered. So, we look at this and there's kind of a bias against it. And then you look at how mental illness is viewed too, right? So the idea of hearing voices or talking to things that aren't there is very poo-pooed in general. And there's some danger with it, and mental illness isn't anything to kind of shirk at. And then people can have difficulty with the voices business, and that all gets out of control. As we can see, people can have symptoms of schizophrenia and stuff like that, which is very similar. So, but then the daemon and having your higher self and your guide is a different experience. But why has that been kind of taken out? Is it because of danger? When we look at people who make these connections to the daemon, they receive very important information. In my Familiars book, I talk about information like language, agriculture, music, science, math. So, kind of really important, pertinent things that comes through these people that have a relationship with their daemon. So it's dangerous, but also the reason we have civilization, in my opinion.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for your call, Jake. I really appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
That is pretty good questions. I mean, because we look at things as demons, but you know what? It's been a long time since someone reminded me about that Socrates story. And the information, the funny thing is the information that Socrates was given set the foundation for a lot of what we know in philosophy now. Right?
And democracy, philosophy, and politics, both, yes.
Yeah, and that was considered, he was considered crazy and evil, so, he needs to die. Yeah, well, at least, I don't think it's that way. It's not that way here anymore, but you know what? It still is that way in a lot of countries over in the East. I mean, we take that for granted here, that you and I can have this conversation on the air freely and talk about these things, versus there are countries and other parts of the world where, we would probably get stoned to death the next day or something. It's not... We
that is correct to this day.
Yeah, we have progressed, I feel, and I don't want to get too dark and say, well, things are just terrible, but man, there are still some places in the world where they just won't grow up, and people have told me that, well, that's culture. You need to respect culture. I'm sorry, man, but if you want my respect, don't kill people because they believe something different than you. Then I might actually give you my respect. Because
hate. I don't think hate needs to be part of any culture.
Yeah, I don't either. Look, if you guys want to call in too, I don't know how much time we got left with Maja here, but that's the number, 1-800-588-0335. I'll also check the chat room as well. Make sure you send those donations in, $10 or more, so you can get in for that drawing, that winter pack, Ancient Life Oil, and a t-shirt, so we can do our thing in Portland. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast. Need another late night fix? You can tune in every weeknight to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop on The Fringe FM.
Hi, this is David Oman with HouseAtTheEndOfTheDrive.com. You're listening to KPLK, The Fringe FM.
Parabnormal News, I'm Brad Bernards. NASA is currently on alert as all eyes are on a space rock that's hurtling towards Earth at an alarming speed of 18,000 miles per hour. According to a report, the asteroid would be nearest the Earth on November 21st. What's alarming is that the asteroid is classified as an Apollo, which is considered to be the most dangerous class of space rock that's set to cross the Earth's orbit. The asteroid's path is too close for comfort and can actually change course and bring it closer to the planet. If things get worse, it can cause damage that's similar to the Yarkovsky Effect. According to the report, the Yarkovsky Effect is when the soft force of sunlight can steer asteroids into Earth-crossing orbits and drastically alter the layout of their paths across the solar system. In theory, asteroids that are larger than 35 meters across can already pose a significant threat to a town or city, so at 650 meters in diameter, this one can be considered a major problem should the asteroid change its course. As it is, the asteroid has not yet been categorized under the Torino Impact Hazard Scale. Cupid was late this year, more than 8 months late.
They reported they received messages that appear to have originally been sent on or around Valentine's Day. The delayed text created some awkward moments.
Hundreds of people reported on social media that overnight they had received text from partners, employers, and even dead family members that were originally meant to arrive in February. Many were sent on Valentine's Day.
Some say they received messages from their ex, their dead relatives or friends, even sending a message to an employer.
Some referred to receiving ghost texts. The text appeared to be sent or received from cell phones with different operating systems and a wide range of carriers, including Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon. Many users believe that only their carrier and intended message recipients have access to their text, but the ghost text incident reveals a more complicated infrastructure. The structure has the potential to create a number of privacy and security issues when a third-party vendor encounters glitches or has its data compromised. Interact with the news at parabnormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Parabnormal News.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Roop. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
What's up, Joe? Hey, man, I just wanted to say your show, dude, keeps getting better and better and better. I love Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM.
Hey, this check is wrong. I worked a holiday and 7 hours of overtime. Not getting paid correctly is a real pain. It could also hurt our boss if our company provides out-of-compliance checks. That's right, construction companies doing business with the government can get fined, or officials of the companies can go to jail if the checks aren't right. It's a law. The Davis-Bacon Act has 30 compliance issues for every check, but there is an easy way for construction companies to be in compliance. EMARS offers Compliant Client, a web-based system that finds and corrects all 30 of the possible out-of-compliance check issues. Users of Compliant Client report an 80% savings in time and money. Running a weekly payroll usually takes about 5 minutes. All 15,000 plus clients of EMARS have never had a legal compliance issue. Plus, they sleep better on check day. Contact EMARS at emarsinc.com or call 480-595-0466.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to The Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Alex X. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335.
Maja is our guest tonight on the program, and it's been just a cool conversation as I thought it would be. Tomorrow night on the program, looks like we're gonna have the Evans brothers. Strong brothers. Steve and Evan Strong are gonna be on the program from ForgottenOrigin.com. So get your questions in right now, because this is our last section here with Maja, and I think we do have a caller here. 615 area code. You are on the air with Maja Deu. Who are we speaking with?
Maja, Joe, this is Chris. How are y'all doing tonight?
Pretty good, Chris. What's on your mind?
I was calling. I had a kind of an interesting. By the way, what you guys were just talking about, I was thinking about the bicameral mind. Have you guys ever read about that or heard of it?
Yes,
great
book.
Yeah, with the schizophrenic stuff, and then the idea that we evolved from bicameral mind. I thought that was fascinating. But what I called about is, Maja, I have a weird question. I don't know. I live in Tennessee. I'm a truck driver. I'm actually on my way to Oregon right now. But I live in Tennessee, and my house that me and my wife bought, when we first moved in there was like this little bag of potpourri and a coin hanging over the door. And I wasn't as aware of things back then as I am now. I kind of get that there was something going on there with that bag. And when I took it down and we kind of cleaned the whole house and everything, over the years our house has taken on this real weird energy where it's almost like entropy, like everything is just falling apart and growing mold everywhere you go. It really bothers me, especially since I'm not there to do anything with it. My wife has to do it all. And a couple of years in, I dug this cup up in the backyard. I was digging in the backyard for something, and I found this cup. And it was like a beautiful coffee cup with all these Native American symbols all over it. And I didn't think nothing of it. I brought it in the house and washed it up and put it in the cupboard. And ever since then, like, the house is just, like I said, had this really weird energy. Does that sound like something I may have messed up by digging up that cup or taking down that potpourri sack or anything like that? It just bothers me.
It's weird that right? Sometimes there are charged objects that will have a kind of charge to them. Usually I just recommend, like, if something bad comes in, something bad can go out, right? So the best solution is to get rid of the things and then do like a cleansing or a clearing with some of these things we were talking about, like sage or frankincense, and just give it a good zhuzh to clear whatever it was out. If someone buried the cup on purpose because it had some weird attachment to it, you can just get rid of it. So it's pretty easy to kind of rectify, but you just do a few steps. And you can even go on Google and just look up basic house clearing. It's not too difficult. You use like some salt and some of these aromatic substances, and it works pretty good.
I use sage quite a bit. I don't know. The cup thing was weird because I just couldn't help but think that, you know, how some people will charge something and bury it. Like, if they've got like something
it's
that's
weird,
bothering them emotionally or something.
Right,
especially such a nice cup. And the thing is that I thought, well, if I don't, if it had nothing, it wasn't attached to me, whatever the problem was, so it shouldn't affect me or the house. But then again, I don't know, like, it's kind of like if you don't believe in curses, they can't hurt you,
Yeah, but when in doubt, throw it out.
Yes, right?
There you go.
Do you still have
I
the
love
cup?
that cup, though, man. I love that cup. I don't want to get rid of it. I don't know why. I found the cup and I love it, but then I got to thinking about it like a year or two later. I was like, it's weird that was buried right there in a weird spot. Like, I don't know, man. Something strange.
Interesting question.
I appreciate it.
Try and experiment. Try and take the cup with you or put it somewhere outside the house and see if the house changes when the cup isn't there. So you can do like a science experiment.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah. Hey, one of the best guests you've had in a while, Joe. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for calling, Chris. I appreciate it. Man, that's cool that we got truckers calling in. I kind of feel like the old Art Bell days, huh? We got truckers calling in.
So
right?
neat.
You know what? I find weird stuff all the time, and I wonder if it's witchy, so to speak, right? Like, I've found a bag outside of my buddy's house. It was a bag with a Ziploc bag with a copperhead's head in it, like been cut off. The snake's head was put in it, and the tongue was pulled out of the snake head. You could see where they pulled out the tongue of it. And, he was going to grab it. And I said, man, do not touch that. And he's like, why? I don't even know what this is. And I said, that's my point. Don't touch it. What would you do if you rolled up on something like that, or you just don't know?
Well, I found a lot of weird things in LA. I'll tell you, man, it sucks with the animals. I always feel bad that people do weird animal stuff. Not to talk trash on the religion, but in LA, there's quite a few folks that do Santeria. So there'll be weird animal stuff that they do. Like my friend and I found this bag of like chickens without their heads. And it was just, like in the place. And so there'll be a lot of stuff like that you might roll across with different traditions where people will do those kind of practices for whatever reason, who knows, but they always have I have a specific feeling when I come across stuff like that, and it's in my stomach. It's like
exactly
it's like I got punched in the gut when I see stuff like that. So I just either will bury it or ignore it completely.
So your book on the I Ching there's a lot of books out there that tell us how to use the I Ching, but you specifically go into each hexagram and tell us what that is. But what do you think differs from your book the most? Is it about connecting the dots between the ancient daemons to the hexagrams? Do you think that's what's different about your book versus the other?
Oh, sure.
I Ching
Yeah,
books?
there's thousands of books on the I Ching for sure. So no short amount of stuff there. The reason I did my book and why I was like, why would I write an I Ching book, right, when there's so many thousands of them? But I've been using it professionally for a while, right? So I really wanted to put in this book my personal experiences to help people relate it to things. So sometimes people use the I Ching and it doesn't make any sense because it's all these, kind of Chinese ideograms or things that are a little obscure, written in very oldie-timey language. And I've had some people complain to me. They'll be like, well, I did an I Ching reading and I read the thing and it doesn't make any sense. So I really tried to make this book relatable and to link it directly to specific archetypes. So in each of the hexagrams, I really tried to tell the story of the archetype of the hexagram, and then also include personal experiences just from doing readings with like hundreds of people that get these. Because some people, like if they have a situation, they'll always get this same hexagram for the same situation, right? So I was like, oh my God, this hexagram really is this thing. So like, for example, someone's having trouble with their dad, it will always give them this hexagram no matter who it is. So I started noticing these patterns, and so I really wanted to put in there the patterns I was noticing to help people make those connections that it took me years to notice.
That's really cool. So then if you're, even if you're an I Ching practitioner and you've got a ton of books, then you definitely should get this one. And if you're new to it, then this will kind of give you an edge on understanding, the history of it a little bit as well. I think that's really cool.
I tried to make it accessible so people could understand it. Yeah.
You know what I always wondered, though, and maybe you could answer this question for me, is like, I never understood why, like, I'm a huge fan of Terence McKenna, right? Like, I'm a massive,
amazing.
But he was all about the I Ching. Like, that was his thing. He thought the I Ching answered questions that, see, that's what I don't get. I'm trying to figure out what was it that he really liked about it, because I think he developed what was that time wave thing based on the I Ching? He developed something off of that.
Yes. So you can ask the I Ching and all divination systems anything. So I always recommend to people, like, try stretching your mind with the questions. And if you sit with the daemon and get into an intense dialogue, most people will have pretty basic questions. And no offense, that's what everybody wants to know about, right? You ask a divination system, like, what's going on with this personal thing in your life? It's usually about money, relationships, or health. That's the main thing most people come to divination with. But you can ask it, like, what is God? What's the nature of reality? How do I do this spiritual thing? And I do, in my I Ching, I have a section for each hexagram called the Guru, where I talk about the spiritual things, because I would ask I Ching all kinds of spiritual questions or philosophical questions. So I try to include that perspective. But when you get into these kind of conversations with the I Ching about philosophy or the nature of reality, the answers it gives you are very profound. And so Terence McKenna really kind of started asking it these questions about time and reality, and he started getting answers, and that's what led him to develop his system you were mentioning.
Yeah, it's the time wave novelty theory is what it was called, time wave theory. Yeah, I think he was developing a software with it too. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, so the I Ching it can get complex on you too quick though, and it kind of corresponds with the theory of fractals too. Now
it sure does. And I in the back of the book I have an essay I wrote comparing it with computers and artificial intelligence as well.
Oh, see there, you got it covered. Then that's a book that everybody's got to get. Then, all right. So I want to go back to this idea of animism because it's just bothering me a little bit. So if I go out and I cut my grass, right? Let's say I just mow my grass. Should I thank the grass spirits to not get mad at me for cutting the blades? You see what I'm saying? Like, this is what I'm starting to understand about animism, or the ideas that I'm getting from it, is that I'm not.
Yeah, you can go there. I mean, the main religion that really goes there, like what you're talking about, are the Jains. Have you ever heard of Jainism?
I've heard of it, but now I'm definitely going to check it out more.
Yeah, so in Jainism, which is mostly in India, they recognize the sentience in everything. So, like, man, they wear a mask so they don't breathe in microbes or kill germs, and they sweep the ground before they step in case there's anything like alive in the dirt. Like, they go to these kind of great sacrificial ascetic practices to try to honor everything alive and recognize its sentience. So you can go like that deep with it, but it's that's like a whole nother way to live your life.
It's like, what about Bob? Baby steps to cut the grass. I don't think I could do that.
It's a lot. You can, you could start by being vegan and then kind of go from there. But like recognizing and acknowledging basically just the value. I think, no matter what we do, if we just see the value of life, of the earth, of all of everything around you right now. If you're sitting somewhere listening to this on some machine, you and everything around you is made out of the earth. So sometimes just like recognizing that you're part of the earth, sitting around everything part of the earth, that can, go a long way with raising your consciousness into that idea that everything is a part of this one thing.
Wow. Okay. So I'll definitely look into that more, because I don't feel like, I forget who was talking to me about it, but they made me feel like, man, if I go outside and I cut my grass and I don't give thanks to the nature spirits, like they could attack me. And I was like, dude, I've been cutting lawn since I was a kid. Nothing bad's ever happened, but maybe the sneezes, you know? I had the yellow jackets.
Part of life, you know, the stars eat each other. Everything destroys and creates everything else in this big, gnarly mess. It's not an excuse to treat things bad or kill things, but part of the existence that we have is this creation, destruction, great big mess. We want to try and have as much compassion as we can, but you know, it's up to you what you include in that.
That's a good answer. Okay. So the main 3 books you have is A Witch's Bestiary, The Occult I Ching, The Secret Language of the Serpents, and Familiars and Witchcraft. Those are your 3 babies, huh? And
those are my biggies. I also made a tarot deck. I have a tarot deck. Yeah, I have a tarot deck I made too called the White Witch Tarot as well.
Well, that's really cool. And you do consultations as well?
Yeah, I sure do. I've been doing those for, oh my gosh, maybe like 20 years now.
So you stay booked up then, don't you? I bet you do.
I do. I'm a big book nerd.
No, I mean, you stay busy, right? Like, I bet you stay busy.
Appointments, yes. I'm very blessed. I'm able to, you know, come into communication with a lot of folks about all kinds of stuff. The divination is very helpful. I wish that more people would use it for psychological counseling. I find it very helpful. And even Carl Jung, you know, talked about using the I Ching and astrology and in consultations and stuff like that. I think it's great to put those 2 things together.
So, okay, speaking of divination, I know I only got a couple of minutes here to ask you a couple of questions, but so when I do divination, like I'll pull cards for me, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing though. I read Book T and the Golden Dawn text, and you know, there's they got like 4 or 5 pages of spreads to pull just for one question. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to do that, but it does mention in there, like if you're not in the right mind, like if you're not in sound mind, let's say you're too emotional or too worrisome about something, then it's probably not a good idea to pull cards to figure out the truth about something. Now, I've noticed that when I do that, like say I'm really worried about something, sick, and I pull the divination cards, like I might just do a 3-card spread or something instead of a Celtic spread or a tree spread. And what that thing always shows me is that I'm scared, right? So is it truly like the mirror of the moment when you do things like that? Should you meditate first, in your opinion, or something?
I find that most divination really is reflective, right? So it does mirror, and your whatever the situation is, it's just going to show you your state. So that definitely is true. I think also people can become very obsessive compulsive with divination. That's a big thing, because if you're in a state of mind, you want to know the answer. That's happened to me for sure, where I'm going to chase it, right?
And you're pulling tarot cards every 5 minutes for everything.
Yes, it'll get it can be like an addiction for some people. So it definitely needs that respect. And I learned that I have to do a lot of clearings and a lot of meditation and then I get like all my clients' stuff like that's theirs comes in too, because you're sitting with people that are in a negative space or they wouldn't have wanted to come in, right? So you have to really know and understand and see what that feels like, and then not, get scared if the divination reflects it, but really sit with it and think about it and acknowledge it and see it, and then come into that acceptance with it. But it's there's a lot to that process, and it mirrors exactly what's going on.
And you have an Etsy shop full of really cool art too. Wow. Yeah, this is really cool.
Thanks. I love drawing. Art is really fun for me. I get to exercise a lot of daemons with it.
Right on. Well, listen, thanks for coming on the show. It's been a blast talking to you. I've learned a lot, and I can't wait to learn some more from you. Maybe we can talk again in the future about some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to be on. That was a lot of fun, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. You guys go check out the website, witchofthedawn.com. That's the website that you need to go to. You can grab, you can grab the books on Amazon too, right? Anywhere you can grab the books.
Yeah, they're all over the place. You can get them on Amazon for sure.
You're not a big social media person though, are you? Just going to bust you out
I do.
a little bit.
I'm on Instagram and
okay.
Facebook. I post some pictures on there now and then.
Well, then I busted myself out then, didn't I? Well, listen, yeah, thanks for coming on the program. It's been a real blast talking to you.
Thanks, Joe. Have a great night.
You too. All right, guys, that was Maja Aoust. And listen, I'm going to have to cut out of here early myself, too, because I've got about 24 hours before I got to get on the plane. And speaking of which, if you want to help our event, you know what I'm going to give away, right? The winter pack, the Ancient Life Oil, as well as a T-shirt if you donate $10 or more. But we're going to get out of here early tonight so we can get ready for that event. Friday night, we'll play the best of for the next following nights. Tomorrow night, we still got a show. But Thursday night and Friday night, we're going to play the best of. However, if you want to hear Ryan and I, more than likely, we're going to be on Ground Zero Friday night. And then if you're in Portland on that Saturday, please come out and visit us. We're going to get out here early. I know it's short notice for you, but I really appreciate all of you guys coming out tonight. We'll probably do this again the same way tomorrow night. And please don't copy the show without written permission. The music was by Chronux, guitar by Bundy. Big shout out to Pacho Don, Eric Markham, Jeremy Scott, Maggie Dean at MaggieDeanRadio.com. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, same time, same channel. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.